you have to go through this journey of living. You have to live your life, you know? At some point in time, you have to tell your parents or your loved ones or whoever, nah, you know what? I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to go in this direction and see where it takes me.
Welcome to episode 36 of the Assyrian Podcast. It's John, and this time I'm taking you into the mind of artist Rabel Betshmuel. I myself have never been good at drawing, painting, or sculpting. So when I get to sit down with an artist who has mastered all of those things, I'm in pure awe. We talked about the art bug hitting Rabel at a very young age, how he decided to pursue art in college and professionally, his foray into music production, how he feels when he sees his work in other people's homes, and what he's doing to help bring along the next generation of passionate Assyrian artists. I strongly encourage everyone listening to check out rabelbetshmuel.com. You can read his detailed bio, check out some of his work, and what he has for sale in his shop. His site even includes a couple of free downloads. Before we begin, I want to remind you that you can download and subscribe to the Assyrian Podcast on just about any smartphone podcast app, and of course, iTunes. Please give us a rating and leave us a review on iTunes whenever you get the chance. That helps us out immensely. If you haven't already, like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. DM us or email us at assyrianpodcast@gmail.com with any comments or suggestions about guests or what you would like to hear on the podcast. A huge thank you, of course, to everyone that has done all of the above, and even if you haven't but continue to listen, or even if this is your first time listening, we truly appreciate your support, and we plan on continuing to give you quality weekly episodes of some wonderful Assyrians. Support for this week's episode of the Assyrian Podcast is brought to you by Tony Kalogerakis and the injury lawyers of Illinois and New York. If you know anyone that has been in a serious accident, please reach out to Tony Kalogerakis. Tony has been recognized as a top 40 lawyer and a rising star by Super Lawyers publication and has obtained multiple multi-million-dollar awards. Tony can be reached at injuryrights.com or 847-982-9516. Rabel, you are both a designer and an artist. You mentioned in your biography on your website that you began drawing at the age of 10. What were some of the things that you drew at that age?
I was drawing a lot of Ninja Turtles and Wing Bulls, believe it or not. Yeah, those were some of the things that I was gravitating to the most. Comic books too, anything from Marvel I liked a lot. So I was drawing, Wolverine or any of the X-Men. But yeah, Ninja Turtles and a lot of Wing Bulls as well.
Did you ever at that age combine the two where you made let's say an Assyrian version of Wolverine or anything like that?
There was a concept and it's somewhere in my archive where I started to design a Assyrian version of a Ninja Turtle.
Nice.
Yeah. So at that early age, I was fascinated with how do I combine my culture with this adopted culture that I became a part of,
right?
So I was always trying to figure out a way to Assyrianize this American experience that I was a part of, And then I was also at the same time playing with a lot of Legos, right? I've been always a tinkerer and a maker, so Legos gives you that opportunity to build, take apart, and then rebuild as well.
An award that you won in high school, this is obviously now a few years into your drawing and your love of art. In high school, they gave you an award. That gave you the motivation to pursue art in college. What was the art that earned you that award? Was it one specific thing or your whole body of work in that year of high school?
I think it was my body of work that I produced in high school. My single and greatest achievement in high school was getting that art award. I was a terrible student, barely graduated high school. I mean, I was not a kid that liked school back then. Thank God for college, right? Like, you go to college and then you find yourself through that experience. But yeah, it was just a body of work. I was doing ceramic work back in 1995. I was tinkering with digital art. One of our classrooms in the art department had Photoshop, like a very early version of Photoshop on a very old Macintosh. So I started to teach myself that program. I started to teach myself Illustrator. I basically was going to art class my senior year 2-3 times a day just to stay busy. And the teacher saw that. Mr. Davis saw that I really had a passion for art, and they gave me the art department accolade for my graduating year. So yeah, it was just the drive and the work ethic that really won me that award.
Did your art teacher also inspire you in any way, or was he just more of a method of sort of nurturing your talent?
A little bit of both. I think he showed an early interest in my culture, being Assyrian, and me having to explain to him who Assyrians are and their past and what they've gone through and their current time, where they're at. He was really interested by that, right? And so he kind of, mentored me throughout the process of becoming a better artist, looking at things that I wasn't aware of, improving my skills, and giving me access to the classroom. I mean, like I said, I was in that class 2-3 times a day, 5 days straight. So I had my own little room where I was able to go in and create work, leave it there, come back and forth as I pleased.
Did you ever find yourself in a situation where you thought pursuing art in college was just going to be unacceptable and you had to do like business or law or anything like that, and you were kind of scrambling to decide what else to do? Or was it just art or bust?
No, man, that was exactly what I ended up going through. I was a business major initially because there is an entrepreneurial spirit within me, right? So I wanted to study business and then minor in graphic design. But to be honest with you, that stuff just bored me. I took an economics class, I took an accounting class, and I barely got through it. I mean, the credit doesn't even count because I got like a C or a D in the class or something, So I gravitated towards art. I didn't really want to be an artist when I was in college, This thing pulled me, and I went along for the ride. Took a chance, and then, I made it. I mean, I'm doing pretty good right now. Can't complain. There's a lot more work to be done, but art pulled me and I stayed with it.
So you're originally an econ major and then you switch. What was the reaction of both your friends and your family when you decided to pursue art professionally and as a degree as well?
A lot of hesitation, right? They're like, what are you doing?
I almost hate to say it, but it's like typical Assyrian reaction,
doing,
right?
Especially for my parents, right? Like, hey man, is this gonna work out? Are you gonna be able to live off of this thing? As I've gotten older, I've come to understand their viewpoint as well. You know what I mean? This is a tough field to get into, but if you're persistent and you're passionate about your art, the money's gonna flow, right? I mean, I don't want to sound like a hip hop artist or something.
But the self-belief has to be there, right?
The self-belief has to be there. If the passion is there, the money will come. And I tell that to every aspiring young Assyrian artist. That's the last thing you need to worry about, right? So there was a lot of hesitation from my family side. My friends often would give me blank stares because, among our group of friends, how many friends do you have that you grew up with that told you, hey man, I'm planning on being an artist? Not many, right?
No.
So it was very new. It was a very new experience to them too. They're like, all right, cool. A lot of them though, over the years, accepted that I was an artist. You know what I mean? And we would go out to social functions and they would introduce me as, hey, this is Rabel, my artist friend, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They finally accepted you and what you're doing, and it's pretty cool. Also, I had 2 uncles that were artists.
So it ran in the family a little bit.
Kind of, right? So my uncle Rabel Betshmuel is a great musician, has 4 albums, under his belt. And then my other uncle, Rabel Betshmuel, is a writer, right? He's a poet. He's published over 12 books. So both of these men were very much accomplished in the field of art, right? The only piece that was missing from our family was that visual side. So I wanted to fulfill it. I wanted to make sure that in the family we have a musician, we have a writer, and then a visual artist.
And we'll actually dig into the other two aspects later, because you're not completely devoid of the musical side or the written side and the reading side either. You're not just a man of paint and art design on the computer either. But before all of that even happened, when you were a little kid, you mentioned that your earliest career goal was to be an astronaut. Do you ever kind of think back sometimes and wonder how different your life would have been if you were an astronaut?
Yeah, I'm still trying to be an astronaut.
Some dreams never die.
No, they don't. And I'm trying to be an astronaut through my work, right? And that being in space, the solitude and the imagination that one can experience is a beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm still trying to be an astronaut. I have a buddy of mine, Ninos, who lives out in Cali. He just wrapped up his master's in astronomy, and he also has a deep appreciation for art as well. And we often talk about this intermingling that often happens between science and art, and he exposes me to new ideas and I expose him to new ideas, and you find inspiration in places that you never thought you would, right? Like, you don't necessarily need to go to a museum to find inspiration. You could be on a bike going downhill and experience something wonderful through that experience,
At the age of, you were roughly about 8, you and your family fled from Iraq and made your way to the United States, first via Iran, Syria, and eventually Greece. Do you have any memories from what I would imagine was a very turbulent time in such a young person's life?
Yeah, Iran, not so much, other than I remember my mom having to wear a hijab, right? In Iran. In Greece, I remember my dad forcing me to go to school and taking us out to see the Parthenon and all these ancient Greek ruins and museums and this and that, and nude beaches too.
Okay,
that was another thing that I experienced as a young kid, because we used to go to the islands and visit them and that sort of thing. So I remember seeing all these things and experiencing all these new things, and for the first time in my life, kind of getting a taste of what freedom could potentially be like.
So did that inspire any of your later art?
I think a little bit, yeah. I'm slowly starting to gear myself towards more autobiographical work. Our time in Greece as a family was really a wonderful time, but it was also strewn with some difficulties as well. There was just, we're an immigrant family where we were making our way to America. Just a lot of stuff happened in Greece that made that journey a lot more difficult, right? But the Greek family across the street from where we lived helped us out a lot. Their young daughter was my middle sister's godmother. They helped us, with whatever we needed. So there was a lot of help coming from the neighborhood to kind of get us to where we needed to go.
You recently, from what I understand, did go back to Iraq on a visit. Where about did you visit?
So I went to Iraq. I just came back actually last week. I went to Iraq for maybe about, I think it was 5 or 6 days for my cousin's wedding. I visited Erbil. We went to and visited Deshtet Ninwe, several villages there, a monastery, an ancient archaeological site that had Assyrian reliefs. I went to Dohuk, Nahadra. I went also to the village of Bebede, where my family is from. And Bebede was the village that was not only bombed by Saddam, but also the people of Bebede have since rebuilt the village, right?
Wow. It's
a vibrant village, dozens of homes there, a lot of farming, a lot of produce. You go, from a tree, you can pick whatever you want, whether it's a pomegranate or a fig. It was just a wonderful experience.
Did you find in the middle of all of that, your cousin's wedding, visiting all these places, that you were absorbing any inspiration for future art during those 5 or 6 days?
Yeah, a lot, actually. Yeah, a lot. Took a lot of pictures, took a lot of notes, just observed, listened, tried to soak it all in. And it was a short time, right? Like when people usually go to Iraq, they're there maybe for about 2 or 3 weeks. Sure. But, I had a condensed time frame. I knew exactly what I was looking for. I prepared myself, and through the research that I did there, through the pictures that I took, the things that I saw, the people that I listened to, I'm bringing it back here now, and I'm kind of trying to organize it and sift through it and understand what do I want to do with this material, right? So, for instance, I went to the Rabban Hermas monastery near Al-Qush. It's an ancient monastery, and it's a monastery that was built in the mountain, so it's caves upon caves, and then
it's a pretty big
make
hike.
your way up there. It's a pretty big hike up there. You take the car up there now, but it's up there. So I went into this monastery, and I saw a lot of designs of ancient crosses that were designed in the shape of a cross, but every single cross had some form of ancient Assyrian element in it. Whether it was the lotus flower or the daisy flower or some other element that they used, that they borrowed, and from it created a cross shape. And so what I want to do at some point is preserve those 13 crosses that I photographed and potentially make some form of art out of them.
Was that something that you noticed right away when you saw these crosses, or was it somebody from the town that pointed it out to you?
No, so we went to the monastery, and you make your way through, and it's it's caves upon caves, and you're tunneling through this thing, and you get to a point where it's an open space, and you experience all those crosses in that open space, and it was really a beautiful experience.
You mentioned in your biography on your website, rabelbetshmuel.com, that experimentation, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here, is at the heart of your creative process, and that it teaches you to embrace your mistakes. Is that something you apply strictly to your art, or does that apply to your other aspects of life as well?
It's strictly to my art. Yeah, strictly to my art. With life, I'm a lot more strategic.
Sure.
I put my designer hat when it comes to my life, with how I want to deal with, the people around me, my finances, my career, what are my goals. I have a very strategic outlook.
So keep a broad outlook when you're doing the art, but then when it comes to
Absolutely.
Real life, for lack of a better phrase, kind of got to know where the rules and the boundaries are.
Yeah, because you need some rules and boundaries, right? As an artist, what you want to do is you want to think freely, and you don't want this other noise to disturb you, right? And life can sometimes be beautiful and sometimes be noisy, And so the more you think about how can I organize this, what can I do to get things in order so that I can make more art. I have more time to make more art, and that's really the ultimate goal.
You merge a lot of ancient Assyrian history with, obviously, modern art. What, if anything, do the history books, or even modern publications, say about Assyrian art or artists?
A lot of those books, a lot of those publications really speak to the military conquest that Assyrians went through. They're not so much talking about the composition or the cultural significance or their treatment of, let's say, space and time. So you really, a lot of these books are somewhat repetitive in nature as far as information. I like to look at those books not so much to read the info, but to see what type of pictures they've taken, because that's the closest thing that you have to studying the actual art. And some of these books have taken really clear pictures. You look through them, you could see the detail, exactly how it was carved and what type of stone they used and that sort of thing.
Are we now, as a people, perhaps too fixed on replicating pieces of the past, like the famous winged bull, and not creating enough original and contemporary pieces?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've gotten stuck in some regards. We have a great ancient past, but then we also have a modern culture too that we need to start exploring. You know, I'm often bored by some of the work that I see out there, right? Because it's the same thing over and over, right? Like how many Assyrian stars are you gonna draw? How many wing bowls are you gonna piece together? We need to look at these elements and try to reinvent them in order for them to continue to live, right? And it's up to the artist to look at them, reference them, and say, I'm going to take this apart and see if I can create something new. Even better, I'm going to try to incorporate it into another culture or bring another culture's motifs into my own and create something new from there, right? Without this concept of newness, I think you're going to run into repeating yourself. Same formula over and over and over and over. And it's up to the artist to say, you know what, I'm going to do something brave. I'm going to do something that I don't care if people are going to like or not, but I'm going to express my own unique voice. I'm going to try to do something that's different from everyone else. I'm going to try to, push the limits as best as I can so that something new is born.
Does your career currently also allow you to incorporate Assyrian inspiration into your designs?
Yeah, sometimes. When I take on design gigs that are for the Assyrian community, absolutely. You're designing with that cultural lens on, right? But my 9-to-5 job doesn't really allow me to incorporate some of, let's say, the pattern motifs that I've designed or some of the other pieces of work that I've done into the food packaging designs that I want to bring to market.
Has there ever been a time where you've sort of, I don't know how much you do on, let's say, the pitch side of things, but do you ever pitch, hey, this type of theme or pattern would look nice and it just happens to be an Assyrian themed thing to a customer or anything like that?
I haven't yet, but I do think there are some brands out there that are slowly growing that are by Assyrians.
Okay.
Some food brands out there that are by Assyrians, and I think there's an opportunity to not only create a beautiful design, beautiful branding behind it that allows you to tell a story, but to also sell a product. And so I'm looking forward to potentially working with some of those brands to inspire this, to incorporate this work that I've done into the products that they want to eventually bring to market.
Tell us about an art piece, or perhaps more than one art piece, that has had the most impact on you.
Honestly, this is probably the toughest question that you're asking me, and it's a tough one, man. It's really a tough one. Lately it's been the Pietà by Michelangelo. Okay. So the Pietà is a massive sculpture piece that has Mary holding the body of Christ, right? And Mary is twice the size of Christ that lays in her arms if they were both standing. And it's a piece carved out of marble, and it's carved to perfection, right? If you ever get a chance to see the piece, in my opinion, it's something. When I look at art like that, I do see something greater than myself there. The same way you listen to some classical music, whether it's Beethoven or Mozart or whatever it might be. You hear a second or two, you're like, wow, this really takes me somewhere. So that piece is one of it's just a beautiful piece. I mean, it takes me somewhere else when I see that piece, and not so much when I look at it from the front, but a side view of it.
Interesting,
right? You see the volume involved in what this artist had to go through to carve that masterpiece out of stone.
And where is that currently housed?
Sistine Chapel.
Sistine Chapel, okay.
Yeah.
And then, so when you first saw that, you were immediately blown away by it, I assume?
Immediately blown away. I've never seen it in person.
You've never seen it in person?
Yeah, you see it in pictures.
So just in the pictures alone,
just in the pictures alone, and of course you study it, you go online, and you find the high resolution version of that piece, and the internet has, it's like your gateway to actually being there in person, right? In some regards, so you see different angles of it, and you study it, and the drapery, the way that it's carved. It's absolutely wonderful. Also, the work that early Impressionist work too, I think is really beautiful work. Really, what they've done since then is they've basically taken art to a new level. And what I mean by that is during that time frame, photography was kind of coming to life, right? So artists were being forced to look at the world a little differently. And so the Impressionists invented a way to look at the world a little differently. And so you see depth, you see a lot of atmospheric space, you see a lot of color shifts, a lot of unique colors that you can't even name in some of those pieces. And they're playing with your optics, right? Like you think you're seeing a blurry picture, but you get closer and closer to it, you become a part of that world. So I think you start seeing this theatrical almost play in some of these early Impressionist pieces, right? And then more recently, you look at the work of Picasso, let's say, right? I mean, that's some beautiful work, starting from his Cubist work all the way to the work that he did, the last 5 years that he was living, what we call now post-expressionism, right? The work that Basquiat was doing in the 80s was kind of, he looked at some of the late Picasso work that was being done. So yeah, it's a tough question, but I look at both the classical Renaissance time period all the way to modern and contemporary art, and you do see some beautiful work.
You brought up Picasso, which actually just kind of reminded me. There's that famous sculpture that's in downtown Chicago that I personally have never really understood, I guess, for a lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. When you see that, what sort of feeling does that invoke inside of you? I
see a lot of imagination in that type of work, right? Like this guy dug deep in that imagination of his and pulled this thing out, And that piece alone, if you read about it, it's basically a view. It's a frontal shot of a woman from different angles, but it's always from the front, whether it's a little higher, a little lower. So I look at a piece like that. It's not only compositionally well made, but it's balanced. It has contrast. It has form. It has shape. It lacks color, but when you look at it during the day, the color of that material can change. If you look at it during the winter, it could also change. So it has really some beautiful qualities that, as a piece of art in the middle of downtown Chicago, I think has brought a lot of beauty to that area there.
And now going back to your uncles that you had mentioned, you kind of cover all the realms of art, music, poetry, and design. So design, drawing, painting, they're all a vast part of your art portfolio, but you've also made music, and I don't know if everybody knows that. So tell us about the 2 albums that you've produced via Kanara Productions.
So Kanara Productions was something that I started back in 2004, right? And this was just a hobby. I wasn't, I'm not a musician. I studied piano with Rabel Betshmuel for 2 years. I jokingly like to say that I was his worst student, So that was my, stint at being a musician for those 2 years. So Kanara Productions in 2004, my uncle Rabel Betshmuel I helped him produce his last album, Buni Babuna, right? And it was the first Assyrian album that we got up on iTunes, made available on iTunes, and it was also an enhanced CD as well. So you put it in your computer. We had behind the scenes videos and photos and what we did, on the production and a whole bunch of stuff. And what we both agreed to is we wanted to show people the process, what it took to produce an Assyrian album, right? And the second album that I produced was for Rabel Betshmuel, who is an Assyrian composer and teacher. He teaches at the AUAF, guitar, voice, and piano. So he's a composer that in the early 80s wrote a piece called Theme and Variation in 4 Movements. It's a piano piece that I helped produce for him. So I got the funding together, met with several individuals, raised the capital that we needed, and went and recorded it at CIC. And my single biggest contribution to my community, in my opinion, has been Theme and Variation in 4 Movements. It took us 3 years to complete that album. It's a very difficult piece, but you listen to the second movement and you get goosebumps throughout your whole body, man. You know, you listen to the end of the fourth movement, the grand finale, you see the power that Assyrian music can have, right? These four movements were based on ancient Assyrian melodies, okay? And he took them and reinvented them. He reinvented them not in a way that it loses its Assyrian roots, but he infuses the Western motifs of music while still keeping that Eastern sound. And it's a very beautiful, very, very beautiful album. I'll make sure you get copies of both albums.
Thank you.
Sure.
What was the most challenging part of recording and producing either of those two albums?
The most challenging part for me was the marketing and distribution of these albums. That was something that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't very prepared for. I needed help, and I didn't know who to go to or didn't know who to ask to help me in that endeavor back then, you know?
So it wasn't so much the technical side of recording everything. It was after you're done, you have this finished product.
Exactly.
And you don't know how to get it out the way you want to get it out.
Exactly, right? So Buni Babuna was launched in 2004, and Theme and Variation was launched in 2007, and after doing all the production work and post-production work and the design of the album and the printing and this and that, I was exhausted. You know, you don't have much space or room left to go another round of promoting this album, you know, doing kickoff parties or whatever the requirement is. So I did lack in that part, you know, and I've always looked back and said, you know, I could have done a better job in that aspect. But they're both on iTunes.
Okay.
People can download them. People can listen to them. They're wonderful albums. And really the purpose of Kanara Productions back then for me was to produce Assyrian music that non-Assyrians could enjoy listening to, right? Because I always look at my culture and I'm saying, how can I incorporate reverse assimilation into this process here for Nakhraye, for Americans, or whoever to come and enjoy this culture? What do I need to do that? And so I wanted to develop Kanara. I developed Kanara Productions with the mind of producing well-produced Assyrian music that told a story, that had a nice cover, that had some information inside that the non-Assyrian can read and understand where this person's coming from, what they're trying to do, etc.
And that sort of leads us into the future generations coming up that'll hopefully be doing the same things. You do some work with the Assyrian Universal Alliance Foundation, otherwise known as the AUAF. Tell us some of the results of that partnership.
So I came to AUAF, I think it was around 2016 or maybe 2015 I think it was, and they brought me on board to do their branding work, right? So a new board came into power, and they needed to really revamp the place. So I was hired to do their branding work. I got to work with Tiglat Asabi, who is also an Assyrian composer, and Joseph Badalpour, who is a stained glass artist, who's also a board member. So Tiglat is the not only a board member, but he's also the founding member of the music program. And then Joseph is the founding member of the art program, right? So I did the branding work. We launched the new brand. All was good, and then Joseph called me and said, you know, I want you to volunteer, if you can, your time to this art program. I need an assistant. I need somebody to help me with things. And I said, yeah, let's do it, right? And it's been one of those wonderful experiences in my life where, you know, you get to see these kids, man. You know, we have about 70 students,
wow,
right? Ranging from the age of 8 all the way into their 40s and 50s, right? So a majority of our students are between the ages of 8 and 18. And we teach art on Saturdays. We have 4 sessions. We teach art on Mondays. We have a photography class on Mondays. We teach art on Tuesdays. And then we have an adult class for drawing and painting on Thursdays. All at the AUAF. Can I read you our mission statement real quick?
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
Okay? So our mission is to teach, prepare, and launch the next generation of Assyrian artists by cultivating an artistic environment that inspires and supports the growth of Assyrian art. So the way we're doing that, the way we're supporting this mission statement is by having these classes, by also looking at our community and seeing who we can support. And the way we support these artists is through this art competition that we're having. The purpose of this art competition is to see who the artists are within our community. And at the same time, we have an exhibition space there at AUAF called the Studio Gallery that basically showcases artists from time to time. Our last exhibition that we had was a photography exhibition for the artist Sargon Sadi. We also had an exhibition for Paul Beitu. So we are trying to support this mission statement by teaching, preparing, and launching the next generation of Assyrian artists through this program that we have.
So walk us through what a Saturday art class might look like for these kids and sometimes adults.
So you come into this class, the kids get dropped off by their parents, and it's an hour-long session, and we're teaching them the basics of art. All right, so you have a mannequin or you have a still life, and we're going through and teaching them the principles of drawing, line, shading, perspective, shape, color, all these basic principles in art we're teaching them. And we're seeing some kids excel more quickly than others, and so we're taking them to the side and saying, listen, we're gonna provide you with this exercise. Why don't you do this? Because the kids learn at different levels, right? Yeah. And what we're coming to realize is we have some really, really talented kids in this program, to the point where I do believe from this program we will probably get at least a dozen artists out of it.
Wow.
Yeah. If they stick with it, right?
Right.
If their parents don't tell them, don't study art, it's not gonna make you any money, man. But then you got a guy like me who is chirping in their ears saying, hey, you're really good, I really like your work, you want to see some of my work, I'm also an artist. So you want to influence them at an early age, and you want to give them examples of yourself, like, hey, I'm actually an artist, I'm working, I have a job as an artist, let me show you what I've done. So I tried to have some of those conversations with some of these kids that I know are real talented, so that they don't forget you, right? Like when I was growing up in Greece, I remembered my dad playing my uncle Shlimun's record, and I remember that music. I grew up with that music. That's why I have such a love for it. So trying to get these kids at an early age, trying to teach them the importance of art, right? I understand that not a lot of them are going to be artists, but at least they're going to grow up with this appreciation of knowing what art is, what is their connection to that art, etc.
Do you find that a lot of them tend to gravitate more towards one sort of concentration over the other, whether it's photography over painting or drawing versus something else?
No, we have really a mixed bag. I mean, a lot of kids in the program gravitate to a lot of different concepts, whether it's abstract or realism, or something very classical in composition and in structure. So yeah, it just varies from person to person. Although there is a big movement right now in our community with younger folks, kids that are like in their teenage years, to photography. That's why we started offering this photography class on Mondays, because we're seeing a lot of kids, get into art, photography, cinematography, that sort of thing. So we wanted to support that as well.
That's excellent. You may have covered this. We were talking about a lot of everything that's going on at the AUAF, but do we see some of your design work as well in that building?
So the design work that you see in that building is the branding that I did, right? The logos, the signage, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you ever get, throughout all of this, whether this the volunteer work, the art, your full-time job, do you ever just kind of sit back and feel burned out or lose the passion and motivation to create?
Yeah, man, sometimes, especially during the winter. The winter, I grow a long beard, I let my hair grow out, and I go in hibernation mode. A lot of my friends and family know that. I struggle with depression sometimes. I struggle with mood swings. That's just how it is. And you experience it. You go through it. It comes and goes. But
Do you feel like you just have to bide your time until you're back in that groove?
Yes, sir. That's
or
exactly what it is.
Is there anything specific that you do to get yourself back in, or you
No.
just know a week from now, a month from now, I'll be right back into the swing
You
of
just
things?
let it pass. Yeah, and it usually doesn't take more than a day or two, sometimes a week. But yeah, I do feel burnt out sometimes. I'm always thinking. I'm always in this mode of making. Even especially when I'm alone. I'm always composing, coming up with new ideas. I've gotten in the habit of jotting down my ideas using my phone. To not lose this concept, this idea. Maybe it'll take me somewhere. I'm always tinkering, and I've also gotten in the habit of watching documentaries at night with the hopes of falling asleep and having a dream about something great or another idea coming to life. So this art thing, I've made it a part of my life 100%, fully committed to it. And then you do that through this type of discipline, it brings joy to your life, or at least it brings joy to my life when I'm around art, when I'm creating and making.
Going back to, you mentioned that you were originally an econ major because you have this natural entrepreneurial spirit. How do you decide what artwork to sell on your website? Because there is a shop portion on your website where people can buy some of that art. How do you decide what makes the cut, what doesn't?
I'm going to start selling everything because I'm running out of space.
Excellent.
That's going to be my motto for 2019. I need to start selling my ceramic work. I need to start selling some pieces that I'm very close to. But at the same time, I want to make sure I sell them to the right person. I don't want somebody to get bored of my work, right? But if I do sell it to you and you decide to sell it or to auction it off, I hope you make money at the same time, right? Like I want it to go in the hands of somebody that if there is that potential of them selling it one day, I hope you make a buck or two. So yeah, I definitely want to sell more work. I want to have a second source of income coming from my artwork and the things that I'm making. For the last maybe 15 years that I've been producing work, it's only the last 2 that I've actually started selling stuff, through my website. And I'm getting better and better at it. I'm starting to do a little bit on the Facebook side, targeting not only the Assyrian community, but also the non-Assyrian community through it, to see if I can show people the work that I'm doing and this great culture that we're all a part of.
Have you ever walked into somebody's house and then boom, right there on the living room wall is something that you sculpted, something that you painted?
Yeah, a couple of times.
Is that weird, or is that an awesome feeling?
It's an awesome feeling. What's weird about it is that it catches you off a little bit. You're like, well, what is that? And then you realize that it's your work. You have a connection to it. It's in your memory, but then you don't know exactly what it is. It's a little weird, but then seconds later you come around to knowing that, oh, that's one of my pieces.
That's mine,
that's mine. Yeah, it's a very cool experience. And I tell people, listen, don't buy my work if you're not going to put it up. I don't need the charity. You know what I mean? You're going to buy my work, put it up.
Yeah.
If you get bored of it, sell it or get rid of it. Throw it out. Don't just put it in the closet.
Sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that with some of your ceramic work that you are sort of attached to, I never really even began to think about that. There's certain works of art that I'm sure that you feel very attached to, very close to. What kind of helps you get over the hump of not wanting to kind of keep that to yourself and putting it out there for sale or for display it somewhere else?
Finding a good home for them definitely helps. Yeah, finding a good home, somebody that can appreciate the work, somebody that could potentially take that work and maybe elevate it even more, maybe.
Does that bond sort of form as soon as you're done with something and you look at it and you're like, wow, I want to keep this one forever?
It does, absolutely. That's how it starts. I mean, some work I'm not really that attached to, but some other work, it comes together in my mind perfectly. All the aspects of art are there for me in some pieces. It doesn't lack anything, and so those are the pieces that I'm closest to. I'm not going to tell you which pieces those are. You'll have to figure that out for yourself.
Interesting. I think I'm going to know the answer to this one, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Do you think it's important for Assyrian artists to pursue the arts professionally?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's crucial to the existence of our identity for Assyrian artists to pursue this profession professionally, right? You can't half-ass it by any means. Either you're going to be a full-time artist and struggle through and eventually make your way, or you're just going to do it as a hobby. And maybe both are okay. I don't know. I'm not trying to dictate one or the other. But if you're going to pursue the arts professionally, you have to study it, right? You have to be disciplined in making the work. And there has to be a sense of humbleness that comes along with it as well.
I guess I'm going to attempt to play devil's advocate here because I actually agree with you, but
Sure.
I'll try to take the flip side of it and say, let's say I come from a position of I have a high-paying job in finance, and I just kind of think the arts are sort of nonsense. It's like, look, we need political involvement, we need capital, we need to move people back to the homeland, everything else that you've possibly heard. What good is art going to do for Assyrians?
Look, all those things are fine. You need politics, you need religion, you need all those things. I mean, you got to be entertained somehow, right? So what better way than that stuff? But art gets at the core of making. And in order for an Assyrian to live, we have to make. Whether it's a painting, it's a sculpture, it's clothing, you know what I mean? By making, you're taking a physical stance. You're saying, I'm going to continue to be Assyrian because I'm producing something physical, right? So by being able to make through that process, any type of art, and I'm not saying just Assyrian art. You don't have to be making wink bowls or whatever. But I'm saying as an Assyrian, you're producing things. That's what's important. And the way you do it is through this vehicle of art or music or literature. That's why art is just as important, if not more important, than politics and all this homeland stuff and all this other stuff that you just mentioned.
In the end, whether an Assyrian is designing stuff, painting, singing, acting, directing, telling jokes at a live mic, or playing an instrument, what's the ultimate advice that you have for all the Assyrian artists out there?
Discover your own unique voice. Have strong work ethic. Learn and study other cultures, which is very important, right? Not just your own culture. We get it. You like being Assyrian, okay, fine. But what about all the other cultures out there? What can you learn from them, right? And stay humble. I mentioned this earlier, right? Stay humble. You know, nobody cares about your art other than you. So don't diminish that art that you're making by being cocky or arrogant. You know, be respectful of the people that want to come and look at your art, want to come and give you feedback. I think those are really important things. But again, I go back to that to discovering a unique voice for yourself. In order to do that, you have to go through this journey of experimentation. You have to go through this journey of living. You have to live your life. You know, at some point in time, you have to tell your parents or your loved ones or whoever, nah, you know what? I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to go in this direction and see where it takes me. You have to be a rebel, no pun intended, right? But you have to be a rebel in life to really get to that point. And we often, negate our instincts. You know, if your instinct tells you to do something, follow it. See where it takes you. You know, look at what the missionaries did. The Church of the East missionaries did with Christianity, how far they spread it, right? They took it all the way to India and China and etc. These people took a risk, right? They took a risk in a sense that they didn't know what they were really up against, but they were passionate and they were willing to take on that journey to get their message across, right? So as an artist, you have to be ready to take that journey. You know, if you don't, find another profession. There's a million of them out there.
I'm going to end with the final few laid-back questions for you. I think some people who ask these questions are hoping for certain answers, but we'll see about that. Anyone who follows you on Instagram knows that you're always reading. We're actually hanging out in your house right now, and you showed me the porch outside that you like to sit outside and you like to read.
Right.
What's a book that you keep going to time and time again?
So 2 books. One of them is Isaac the Syrian, This is a great book.
Okay.
All right. This book I'm going to probably have to read 2 or 3 more times because it's so dense.
How many times have you read it so far?
I've read it so far 1 time.
Okay.
Yeah, only once. And then another book called The Church of the East, An Illustrated History of Assyrian Christianity. Okay. This is a book by Christoph Baumer. This is in the second edition was released probably 6 or 7 months ago. It's available on Amazon, and it's not a hardcover. It's a
paperback.
Paperback, yeah,
Okay.
and it's a great book. Both of these are religious books. I get it, and I'm not by any means the most religious person in the world, you know. But man, this book, this Church of the East book here, in my opinion, is really a history, the modern history of Assyrians. Is
Okay.
what this is.
Are you
Told through the lens of Christianity?
Right.
Right.
Are you mostly a non-fiction reader? Do you like to sprinkle some fictional stuff in there too?
I'm trying.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to read more and more fiction, but yeah, I don't know. I've gravitated more towards mysticism and art, design, history, Assyrian history. I still feel like I have a lot more work to do in that in that area. But fiction is cool too, man. I mean, you have some great authors out there that could easily transport your mind somewhere else while you're reading.
If you ever need any
pieces.
recommendations, just right here.
Awesome, cool. I'll take it up on
And
that.
I know this question completely unfair. No matter who we ask it to, that you could name a million people, but favorite Assyrian artist.
Nahran Maliki, Hannibal Alkhas, Paul Beitu, Fred Farhad, and most recently Atra Yivargis. Their work is unique and filled with imagination. There are many other artists out there too that I'm not mentioning that are great. But lately I've been studying the work of these few individuals, and I love that they're all so different from each other, and that each and single artist has a unique voice of his own or her own.
And lastly, but not least, your favorite Assyrian Instagram account to follow.
Mesoportrayal.
Come on, man. You're supposed to say Assyrian podcast. No, I'm kidding. No, Mesoportrayal, that's one that I started following about a month or so ago now. That's a really good account. Just tell
Really
us
good
about
account.
that.
So their curation is on point. These guys are finding anything Assyrian or Mesopotamian related and they're posting it. And oftentimes I go to them for inspiration, right? You post, they find stuff that you don't even think exists. And it's really wonderful what they're doing. You know, they're I think the hipsters of the Assyrian generation, if you will, because they're posting some pretty cool stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Rabel, I want to thank you. You are not only a talented artist and a creator, but you are a talented motivator. You've definitely sparked a fire in me to maybe try a few different things that I've had kind of stored away for a little while. And I wish you all the best. And maybe there will be a round 2 at some point in the future. But thank you very much for your time.
Let's do it. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on.